Okay, friends, it's 3 past 12 where I am, and so we're going to get started here. And so just on behalf of RCC, we're so delighted that you found your way to this community call today. And we're here, across Turtle Island, to learn together and to be connected to one another and to feel supported, and especially today by Heather. Before I get into introducing Heather, though, just a few sort of housekeeping pieces. One, if you're just joining, you're invited, if you'd like, to change your name to include perhaps what center or organization you're with, and if you'd like your chosen pronouns. And you can just do that by clicking on the top right corner and changing rename if you'd like, no pressure. And also in the chat box, if you'd like to say your name and where your physical location is, and then also if you'd like the traditional territory that you're joining us from today. So I don't know if and I also invite you to mute yourself if you're not going to be a speaker, just in case your phone rings or your dog barks or something like that. Although we do love the four-leggeds in this community. So I don't know if you're like me, but I've just run from another meeting. And before that, I had another meeting. And I'm feeling like my blood just kind of like rushing. And also, it's rushing because I'm just super excited to spend time with all of you and with Heather. So what I'd like to do is I'd just like to invite you to find your feet on the floor, and know that below those floorboards and maybe the basement below you, that below all of that is the earth that we are all connected to, that we are all dependent on and come from. And it doesn't matter what tradition that we belong to, we know that this source, this earth, is so vital to our every moment. And so know that you have your rootedness through your feet down into the ground. And if you're holding a pen or a paper, just put that down. If your fingers are on the keyboard, just take them off. Just open them and just experience this air that flows in and through your fingers. Take a deep breath. Take two or three of those. And in those breaths, just let go of everything else so that you can be fully here for these 90 minutes, that our energy and presence can be connected to what we're going to learn, and even more important, to this circle of people. And so may light shine on you during this time of collaboration. May you feel peace, and may your brain be activated so that in an hour and a half we can go back to what we were doing before and feel more centered and more aligned and more ready to do this work. So friends, I hope you feel grounded and ready to go. I already feel better. I hope you do too. I have the privilege. First of all, my name is Michael Schuberg, and I am the RCC Network Manager. And I've been delighted to be connected to RCC now since 2018. And I've firsthand seen the strength of this group and this collaboration across Turtle Island. And whether today is your first ever meeting, or whether you've been on every call since the beginning, you are so welcome. And I'm just so delighted to connect with you. And as network manager, I love to get emails from you. If you need to talk or want to feel supported, I'm here. If you have an idea or a question, I'm here. Also on the call today is Peter, our program manager for RCC, and also Pam, who is our coordinator and administrator. And Pam is behind the scenes waving there all the way from Spain. And we're delighted, everybody, to be here together. But most importantly, I want to introduce you to Heather Deeth. Heather is a seasoned executive leader in sustainability and organizational transformation. She has led global supply chain innovation for the company Lush, and has most recently been the Chief Product Officer and interim CEO of Hollyhock Center in British Columbia. She likes to grow organizations while advancing work at the intersection of climate, consciousness, and systems change. And she is a fellow Ontarian here with me in Canada. So I'm delighted to turn it over to her. She has a great time planned out for us. So I'll turn it over to you, Heather. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. What a beautiful arrival. And this is my first RCC community call, so nice to see so many friends and familiar faces and new ones as well. So thanks for the intro. My name's Heather Deeth. I'm calling in from the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, the Mississaugas of the Credit, Mississaugas, and the Anishinaabes First Nation on the west side of Toronto in Canada. And yes, my name's Heather Deeth. I'm a mom. My son is 8. We're in that back to school shuffle, end of season. And I'm sharing with you today some of like the learnings that I've had over my career. As Michael said, I've had a long history in ethics and sustainable business, and I've worked for large consumer goods. I like to work in, I used to joke in chocolate. I was in chocolate and cosmetics for a long time, and then I feel like I reached the pinnacle by becoming into retreat centers where the product is excellent. Need to be working in sectors that I believe in. Um, so what I'm sharing with you is like all the things I've learned in dropping into this sector. And what's really important is that I know that we all are oriented towards purpose, to spirit, and with heart, and for the transformation we want to see in the world. And I think that is like so core to who we are as beings and the work we want to be doing. And I think what we're finding is at the exact same time, we're finding out that we have to be very savvy business operators as well. And so we need to be running our enterprises in a really sustainable way so we can invest in all the incredible, cool, amazing, fun things that we want to be doing. And so I'm going to pop a presentation up in just a second, just to guide me along, to keep me on track of what we're doing today. And I know Michael set the like community agreements with RCC, well, not with community agreements per se, but just one thing to note, like coming into this conversation, is that to remember the story and not the people. And the other thing I just like to flag is sometimes that talking about money and finances, like especially for your centers, like everyone's in a different spot. Everybody is in on their own journey. And so let's really honor that. And we're here in a really supportive, kind, compassionate environment. And I really trust everyone here to uphold that. So I'm just going to pop up a quick presentation. So our agenda for today is that we're going to do a breakout to start out just to check in and everyone get to know each other and who's on the call today. And then I'm going to give a brief presentation on retreat center finance and operations and what I'm calling is like applying business practicalities to our sector. And then we'll do another breakout discussion, report back, and lots of time for Q&A at the end before we wrap up. And so without any further delay, we'll send you out into breakout groups. And I'd love for everyone to introduce themselves and which center they're calling in from, and maybe the intro question can be what are the top 3 things that are happening and impacting your center right now? What's top of mind? And so maybe when you hop into the breakout groups, you can just take a minute to reflect on that before getting started. Well, that's a good sign because it means that people had lots to share if you're getting cut off. So I just wanted to open it to the room. Did anyone hear any like shared themes that we can just popcorn it out? Were you hearing things, same issues? I know in my group that was certainly happening. Any big sparks for anyone?
Well, I was, oh, I appreciated um, Stan's comments about what to do in these times. I know we're all thinking about money and all these things. I'm from the startup world, and my theory is that money follows value. And so if we're providing value to people right now, then we should do reasonably well, although it's a challenge.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. Any other big juicy ones pop up?
Uh, I would say, how are we affordable and profitable at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, all the nodding. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone.
Also, a lot of great chat in the chat box as well for folks to peruse. So have a look there.
Great.
Oh, and if I can just add one real quick, because the breakout room went really fast and my Wi-Fi dropped, but we're just starting out. We're not even in operation yet. We're in the middle of renovations, but a big one for us is figuring out the sort of application and screening process and how do you decide who gets to use the retreat center and who gets, is it first come first served? Is it lottery? Is it because we know that there's a lot of people in need, and how do you sort of equitably um, provide that access to the people that need it most?
Yeah, that is a very juicy question. So some things we'll talk about and other things we won't, but know that you're in good company on all those things. So just to hop into a bit short presentation, which we can, and then we'll hop back into discussion again, is when I think about melding business practice with our retreat center sector, these are what I call like the big things, like the on this side. And I know there are many big things like in the holistic way we look at things, but to keep it a bit focused for today, and that it's going to be budgets, mapping and diversifying revenue streams, margins, and financial performance and analysis. And so we'll touch on all those things today. So start off with budgets. And so I don't know if all the other orgs, if you may have experienced this, but what I noticed is when budget season would come around, and most of I'm sure many of us are on the year-end system, so it kind of budgets are kind of present with us right now, is how it used to go is like every department across the organization would kind of, its budget season would go off and like do their budget for the year. And then everyone would bring their budgets back, and then you consolidate it, and then you see where you land. And then the negotiation and certain levels of heartache and and negotiating that with your management team of what does or does not happen throughout the year. And so one key piece for me is to not completely abandon that approach, but it's actually much more important to start with the plan and to start at the highest level. And that most of the time when you think about your budget for an upcoming year is tied to the plan. And of course, this plan has to be aligned to your strategic plan and vision, and to take a moment to like really see the year ahead and to vision like what is your offering? What do you need to be doing? What do you need to be successful? What areas of your center like need investment? And when I say investment, it's like it's more about resource allocation. What are you putting money against? And like what needs tending? I heard people come up in our group of like, how do you attract the right people? So is that tied to a compensation piece within your center? Is that what needs to be in your budget? And so one thing like that I like to practice for many years is that sometimes it's really hard when you kind of like statically arrive of like, okay, I'm gonna go make a plan that I'm gonna go do a budget for, is to really be tracking that over time. And so this is like a very basic recommendation on one hand, but it's really helpful when it comes to drafting your budget. Is like I just run one shared document for the senior management and senior leadership team to be tracking all the things over the course of a year Do you know how many times in a week when you're like, oh yeah, make sure we remember that for next year for the budget? But then inevitably when you get to budget, you can't, like, we can barely remember what happened in April this year. And so tracking all those pain points and having it all like collated and consolidated in one document is like quite helpful as you go year over year. And the other thing that I have found really useful about that is then you actually have some sort of collective knowledge over what the pain points are. And then this can become like a foundational document of like how you build your budget, because you're doing, and many orgs are shifting and changing. I know that to be true. But then we're also building the infrastructure and the changes and priorities to go ahead with as you draft your budget. And those are the agreements over from this, the whole big list. I can tell you, even at Hollyhock, we have, you know, our list is like a page and a half of bullet points of all the things we need to add into, all the things we need to remember. And a lot of those are like little mini projects in itself. They all take a little bit of work to get it right going into budgets. But then you do have this like consolidated list and a bit of a guide for what you're working to. And then the other piece is like you can also track your adjustments year over year, because I know for myself, I can definitely not remember what we did 2 years ago in the budget and what was in or what was out. I cannot remember. And so having enough documentation around your budgets and planning process is really helpful. The third thing I like to say is like give yourself enough time. So I know sometimes it's hard when you're still in one operating year and everyone is focused on making the financial results of this current year, making sure it happens. Like we're very much in like the operations of execution of this year, but to be looking forward and like giving yourself enough time, because when it comes, unless you're in a center that has an abundance of resources, usually there is a certain level of, well, and even if you do have resources, there's a lot of priority setting and discussion, and that requires a lot of socialization within your senior leadership team or management team and within your board and finance committees at the same time. One thing that I found like really hard is that, you know, in the years at Hollyhock, we were approving budgets in December, which like, and then you're going with that budget like 20 days later. And if there are hires and things, you're actually not making, you're quite delayed. You can get delayed in your initiative. So it's great to be like on ramping into a new year with enough time and orientation towards where you're going. And the fourth thing is around like budgets being a guide. And of course, budgets are like really key. It's like what I know our boards all look at like very closely. But my really strong recommendation is actually the plan is way more important than the budget. The budget needs to support the plan, of course. But knowing where that plan is and where you are going in the year is actually where to spend the most energy and effort, because it will have the impact through the numbers. Next, I'm going to just touch on like mapping and diversifying revenue. And so for every organization, like have a look at and like really map out where are all the touch points that you make money? What are all the things that generate your top line? And that can include fundraising, accommodations, your program tuition, facility rentals, your store, if you have one, body work, you know, give or take whatever this is situationally, additional food or beverage options, like what are the other fees that are in there? And to like really have a look at all of them, like kind of individually and then collectively. And then to think about when you map all that out is like, what is shifting? And like usually what you can start to see is like, especially if you add in like some basic like top line numbers, like how much are you making off of each one of these things, it is to look at that like mix of things, of all the things that make up your revenue lines, and to have a look at over time, like what is shifting year over year and how is it changing? And are there things that you are doing that actually aren't working so well, like in service of you and your mission? And just have like a really clear eye on that. And then the second question I like to look at, like when I think about revenue, is like what is the state? And it's kind of tied to the goals and the plan, but is the goal to increase revenue? I know a lot of us are like thinking about that because many of us who have gone through the pandemic and have been operating in like deficit for a little while, we're all like, oh, we have to be breaking even, we have to be increasing that top line. And so it's like, where is that going to come from? And so then you map it all back through your revenue lines to have a look at where that is. And you can grow the top line, but it's also to really think about profitability at the same time. You don't have to grow the top line to be profitable. That's like definitely one of the easiest ways to get there, but you don't necessarily, that's not necessarily dependent on. There are different ways to get there. And is your goal just to hold steady? And so for me, like that question of like, what's the state of your org is kind of important because it really impacts the orientation of the team and the leadership of like where you are going. And for me, it's always like, what's the spirit and culture and like heartbeat of the org? Like, how fast are you going? And I know we all live in this like urgency culture, like running around, in service of others, but it's like that orientation, are we growing? Are we holding steady? Are we just trying to be profitable? Like just being really clear on that can be really helpful. And then to ask yourself, like, what is possible? And once you have a map of all your revenue centers, you actually can like go through and have, in that planning budgetary strategic plan that hopefully is there as well as like, to be asking like, which one of these areas is top of mind. And then lastly, I'd like to offer that like resilience in all of our systems is like having multi-layers and diverse portfolio of offering. And so, I've learned from my experience at Hollyhock is that I really believe that programming truly is like an art and a science. Like you can run all the analytics, we can use all the data to like describe a program, we can do all the heart-centered, we can build a beautiful program, and it's actually quite hard to tell what is going to sell really well year over year. Sometimes it is hard to match the market precisely to what you're offering. And so I think it's really useful to have like a range and to really extend that outside of just programming, but to think about that wider across all your revenue lines along the way. And so we have time for Q&A later, so I'm going to keep going for now, if that's okay. Next, like on margins, one of the beautiful things, I know we have a whole range of ages in our centers and organizations, of some new ones just starting out, not even open yet, to like some long-standing centers. One thing, Hollyhocks is in its 44th season. And I note in a lot of centers, I feel like I've encountered a lot of legacy pricing and costs. That things are priced the way they are because that is how we've always done it. And on the cost structure as well. It's like, oh, you've run off of volunteers, or you've run off of work exchanged, you've run off of these things. And we were really reliant on those key components kind of making up and lifting up our margins so we were making enough money. And so I know that for most centers, like coming out of the pandemic, that the legacy pricing, especially when we've experienced this huge cost of living increase and inflationary pressures on so many fronts, that we really need to move away from the legacy. Because the current reality and financial situation of the legacy, it's so different now that we have to like move away and like quickly. And so the invitation is to consider your pricing model. And there's two approaches to that. Well, there's many approaches to pricing, of course, but it's like once you've mapped all your revenue streams this can be kind of an interesting question. The top-down approach is to consider like, what can the market bear? Sorry, that's very commercial terms, but how much will people pay? What's the max amount of money it's like the opposite of access on one hand, but it's a good number to know, is like, what is it worth if you went out to the market, and what will people pay? Like, how price sensitive is your customer? And I think most of us have a range of customer who come and have a range of offering. But it's like to think about, as you think about your customer profile, it's like, what will they pay? Who are you serving, and what's appropriate that? And like kind of get a little bit familiar with what that market price, top price could be on the top line. And then there's the other way, the bottom up consideration of like understanding all the cost structures underneath and like managing through that. And so when I talk about like legacy cost structures, I do find that we really do need to look at like new ways of being. And this piece is, I think, is always really hard, because at most of our centers, I know in my experience, like most of the labor, most of the cost is people. And so there's like a people, systems, and efficiency that we need to keep working on. And people, you know, people want to do a good job, people want to feel valued. And so how do we have everyone working on the right things? Along with all the systems, along with those like, you know, the hard cost of goods structures, things like, how do we have people systems that really work as well? And to be thinking about those structures. And so I don't want to say cost structures as like some nebulous thing, is that it is people structures underneath. It can be hard costs, it can be all our programming costs. But at the bottom line is like eroding margins is actually not sustainable. But to hold that, like when you think about pricing, map all those revenue centers at the top. And Peter, I work with Katja at Hollyhock, and the team of Hollyhock who's on here, and Peter Range, and you know, we used to joke of like, oh, we have to be doing like break even or better. Like that was kind of like the baseline. You have to make money. You can't lose money on something, but you don't necessarily, you know, I feel like the orientation around nonprofit is that you can like hit zero and you're okay. But I actually think we need to be break even and much better, because we have the inflationary pressures of all the overhead of what it takes to run our centers as well. And so lastly, just on margin, like in how I see and like think about things is that I also see margins as like another lever to be playing with, and another piece of the puzzle when you think about your earned revenue. Because you don't always need to make the same amount of money on everything. And so you know, we have to be in service. We have to be earning top dollars, and it's important to manage the whole. And so just think about it as another lever that you can be playing with in your portfolio of finances and tools around creating a program and an offering that you can be in service to your community on. The last piece is on financial planning and analysis. And I talk about this is, you know, I know like a lot of the times our orgs are really governed by like, how are you performing against the budget? And that being like the biggest thing. And sometimes it looks really great some months, and sometimes it's a little bit sideways. And so it's like, how do we start to go like deeper than that, and to think about, you know, what does performance look like in our sector? And then what is the analysis needed to do that? And like to speak about it a little bit like more plainly, like for me, I really think about it, it's like, what's the rhythm of the organization? Like, what are the cycles that are alive? And I do think it's really different whether you're running a seasonal center or you're operating year round. Like that has a huge impact on the cycles. I can tell you from some of my experience from working at Lush would make all its profit in the 5 days before Christmas for the entire year. And so like the leadership team, we would be, you know, the message at the time was, well, don't mess up those 5 days. So plan, organize, orient around those 5 days so that you have to maximize those dollars, because if you miss, you're kind of like, you got to wait a whole year before you can kind of make it up again, or you won't have as much funds to go do what you need to do later on in the year. And so it's really understanding, like every organization has them. There is a cycle, there is a rhythm around like these peak periods of what financially matters in your organization. So, and for me, that's a little bit of like knowing, like, where do you need to be and by when? And I think this is an Adam Grant quote, is like, in budgets, we all make budgets for the year, and then you have no, in our rapidly changing world, it's really hard to know what the 12 months out will be. And so it's actually really important that we're always kind of, when we think, because budgets are kind of stagnant things, and that's kind of my challenge with them, is we always have to be looking forward, and forecasting and laying the groundwork on like the what's to come. And so, yes, it's important to know exactly where we are, what we're doing, and where we've been and how we're performing, but it's really important to be looking forward. And you can do that by setting these like, certain key performance indicators, actually, and could actually really work in our sector as well. And so things like at Hollyhock, for example, like every Monday morning, I come in and I build like a financial dashboard. And it's not on like week sales or month sales, it's on the entire season. And most of us have all our registration data. We can see what that is, and that you can actually forecast where you're going to be on the end of the year, like usually by midway through the season. And so there are many things you can do just to keep track of what's your total top line revenue, how many program sales have you made, how many bed nights, whatever your drivers are, what your fundraising dollars are. I would build that all into like one comprehensive dashboard. And then it's really easy to give your CFO and your finance team and to your board. And so that you're getting a picture in your financial results of where you are right now, but then you still have an eye of where you're going and how the year is trending. The other piece that I like to do is what I call program performance, is like how well is our program selling? And having a line of sight through that. And this comes into like sales, knowing the sales cycle, of our guests, our participants, our customers, so to speak, and who we are serving. It's like, what is the sales cycle for them? And like, when do they buy? When do they make that decision? And like really knowing those time frames is really important, because you can run a lot of analytics and understanding and knowing your customer. Usually is data that is available within your system already. And so that's the big thing, for financial performance and analysis. It's really in knowing where you will be on the year. No one likes surprises. Where I feel like I know that we're all already so operational already. So if you can get line of sight or forecasted forward of like, oh, it actually looks like a little bit light, we don't have as many guests comings here, you can actually plan around that. By having line of sight on it. So it's like just keeping, I use, financial performance and analysis to really have a look forward, and so that you can see things and also make adjustments. So I'm just going to pause there for a moment. Sorry, I've not been monitoring the chat.
I've been monitoring it for you, Heather, so don't worry.
Great. Thank you. We're actually going to go out into breakout groups again, just so you can talk amongst yourselves and like, the question for your group is like, what of those things is going well for you, and where do you feel like there's an opportunity in your center? Or what's alive for you, like what's sparking for you? And if we can send everyone back out, that would be great. We'll do 15 perhaps for this one. And so everyone can get a few minutes to talk about what's alive for them. And then we'll see you back. It goes so fast. So much to talk about. Well, welcome back, everyone. We actually wanted to take the most amount of time just to share back what you were hearing, any reflections, any offers.
And if folks wouldn't mind just using the little raise hand tool,
Yes.
and then I can help facilitate that. And I'm also going to watch the chat here. So
Great. Thank you, Michael, for the reminder. Yes, raised hands. Scott, do you want to speak your question into the room or reflection?
Oh, I had so many questions. Which ones was it? Well, one of them was alternative revenue streams that were truly profitable and not just more like a nuisance. But that's one of my questions.
Not a nuisance. Yes, energy, impact, effort, equation. Does it really generate enough profit? Yes. So I'm
Yeah.
starting to feel allergic to low margin additional projects because none of the teams have sufficient headcount to support that. And then we just burn all our teams out for low margin activities.
Exactly. Just don't waste the resource and put the time towards it. It's a energy suck and it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
I will comment on that with our massage and gift shop. I always felt like I called it the redheaded stepchild. It was the thing that it's something we offer because the guest experience is better with having these offerings. But as we've been growing over the years, I do find it's becoming a pretty good revenue source for us. And also the guest experience is nice. So it does take a while, again, we're so small that most of us just do all the things. And so finding somebody to take over doing what I do to get all this, it's just, I don't know if it's like, how do you hire a person just for that? Because it's not a full-time job. So that is the hard thing. But it is bringing in some money. So that makes me feel good.
I like what you said. The thing I would also encourage, it's true. There's always a little bit higher cost. It can be lower margin off the start while you're trying to build something, but it's like to look at it, put some energy, put some of that investment in and to be getting somewhere, maybe not immediately, but like in 1 to 2 years, like that you can have a healthy secondary revenue stream off of that item.
One of the things that supports our store sales is that we do a featured artist twice a year. So either local artists or people from groups that rent our space. And so we just do, an art display on consignment. And then that also helps our store sales when we sell some of their paintings. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
At some point, I'd love to see data across the membership for number of programs annually. And by program, I mean anything that is less than a day long versus retreats. And look at how we get to what is low margin, because I'm trying to calculate the level of effort required, which sometimes for some of these programs is almost equivalent to a retreat where the ticket is bigger. What's the net ROI, if you will? Because I feel like we're busy churning out lots and lots and lots and lots of activities. And we have the opportunity to host meetings and conferences for people as a balance, as a revenue stream that's pretty unrestricted. But we're eating up our rentable space with programs. And I haven't found an efficient way to do that analysis.
It's interesting, Leslie. When I look at that, it's interesting on what you're saying about the programs, and you're churning a lot of them. I'm trying to figure out which of these like entry level programs or these lower cost beginner programs actually lead to someone joining a higher ticket. So figuring that out and having a system to track that. I don't have that in place. If anybody has a true customer lifecycle management software or system that's helping you out, please let me know. We're investigating that right now, but we need to try and track from, like, we have people that come in on a webinar. How many webinars does it take before they come to a day-long in meeting, on-site meeting, to then a weekend program, then a week retreat? So we have none of that data, but we'd love to understand it. So it's a good point.
Yeah, and Leslie, I think everyone, like, I think that is, oh, sorry, Christine, hop in, please. I'll let you go first.
I would suggest responding because I'm gonna just ask a similar question, but shifting the focus. So go ahead and answer and then I can,
Sure.
yeah.
I do like, from everything I have seen, I do think it's like having that mix and like, and just knowing it's like, where are the thresholds? And like, what is, and then really like playing with the tension to like that point, like some stuff is loss leaders, but it's going to drive business. It's like knowing, and then, but just like managing the mix of, and the diversity of that, but knowing that it's probably all in, you know, and you have to like sort through what is serving and what is generating, but then after that, like knowing that there is some diversity needed.
Shall I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah, I would say, like, to the question about a customer management program like that sounds really cool, but I don't know that we have enough programming in and out that I need a whole thing for it. Like, most of it's still intuitive for me because I'm so close to all of our programming because we just have 2 full-time staff. But I have a similar question about because so many, because I'm, as a director, doing everything from offering things to, preparing financial budgets. So Heather, you had asked earlier about every Monday going in and looking at your financials, and I'd love to know what dashboards exist for bringing all my financials into one place so that I can become more efficient and consistent in reporting financing to my board. So ours is very clunky right now. We get all excited about talking about it for the last quarter because we're getting the budget, and then we don't really talk about it or think about it except for monthly check-ins, which is, so I'd just be curious if you have specific recommendations for software in that similar spirit of like what actually works for people.
Yeah, I totally hear you on like, what's the system? I don't like having complicated systems. So like our Hollyhock, as an example, runs off Retreat Guru. So you can build in, and I think several centers, but that's whatever platform you're using, somewhere in there, they like, I think most places you can generate a report and look at those numbers. There's usually, in most systems, there are some ways to look at total revenue taken in or sales pipeline or top line revenue. There might be a way. And so for me, it's like I pull all the data, I just build one report in Retreat Guru, and that's what I go to every single time. So it's very, because it also has to be fast and efficient, because it's more like, what is the data telling you is the question, but getting the data itself should be, hopefully be easy, which I know easier said than done.
And if I could just jump on that, I would think I used to use Five Oaks used to use Recruiter, and we switched to another software called Venue 360. And in both situations, staff felt so hesitant to like write to staff at those platforms to ask how to create these reports. And I would just say, like, you're paying for a service, don't be afraid to like actually write it and ask the questions of the experts to get the information in the way that you want. I think so many of us stumble with like trying to figure it out on our own, and that's not a good return on the investment. Like, you're paying for something, ask for what you need. And RCC is learning that with Salesforce right now and figuring out what do we need from this to generate the right information. So just to cheerlead you to ask those questions.
Yeah.
There was a great question earlier on your first slide about giving some examples of what would be some pain points, that one might experience that would kind of going back to that first slide. I'm not sure if you wanted to talk about that.
Sure. Well, I think it's always like in budgets and even in like so much of it is in hiring and like wages. Like even that you forget, I can see Tatiana nodding, like yes, all the things of like, right, we need incentive for people in September because September's such a hard month, we're always short-staffed. And so then we end up paying bonuses, but we don't plan for it in our budgets. Things like, of course, we all are front and center that we need to invest in the website. Your website is usually like a major point of sale. It's actually where you convert the customer when the person says like buy and gives like your credit card information. That's actually your point of sale. That's when you convert them. And so how easy is that process for them to sell? And anyone who's interfacing with whatever platform you're using, in my experience, that's not a seamless process for anyone to like double down on your revenue in any ways. And so are there add-ons? What are all the different tech tools we can use right now that would serve us, like build our offering in a good way? But then you're trying to do RFPs in advance, getting all these things lined up. And so those are like the pain points. It's like, how are you more efficient? How are you planning better against what actually happens in a year, like on those bonuses, on those wages, on all those things? Yeah, like what are all I have to go look at the Hollyhock list of things that we've been building, but it's like and it's even like planning for training budgets, we're switching back to buffet from plated service on food. And so like, yes, you have to invest in like retraining your staff. And so all those like little, like don't things up, but it's like staff hours makes up a huge part of like most people labor hours. It's a big thing.
Thanks. That's great. Great examples. Any other questions, folks, or topics to raise?
Michael, just to hop in our breakout, we talked about it seemed and I will just say this was also my experience at Hollyhock is the cultural relationship to money in these centers. And I don't really know exactly how to tackle that, but I wonder, Heather, if you have any reflections on that, given that you came from social purpose business and you walked into nonprofits and I think it was pretty consistent on our call that everyone felt like the cultural relationship to money was hard.
Yeah, I think and I think that's like built into like the legacy a little bit. Like so many of these places, anyone who's been around, like there was so much like volunteer labor that like made up these places before. And that's not really a thing anymore if you want to stay alive in the world. And just when it comes like to being in relationship to money, like I always think of it, there's part of me that is like, well, you have to be offering something of value, whoever offered like, it's like where the money will go. It's like, what is of value? And so what you're offering out to the world actually has to be really good. And to like have a really honest, like sober, like we have this quite a bit at Hollyhock is like, it's challenging because sometimes it means that not all the tension we're in is not all the equity, amazing, beautiful programs that you want to offer out in the world, like land on the market in a good way. They don't sell. And that's like that's like very confronting. Like we've had this for like, and this is a perpetual problem because it's like, how are we serving? And then how do you get people to like give you their money or fundraise, either whether it's fundraising dollars or people paying to come in that real tension. But I think we have to like constantly be refining like what that value is. And then I think then it comes down to the commercial aspect of like, how are you marketing it? How well do we know our customers? Because that impacts the offering and it offers like what we are selling and what we are doing. And I think, and it is really challenging, but I think we can't be, you know, I know so many centers, like we're really talking about abundance in a different way because we do add so much value. We know that, you know, what the skills and places and services and refuge we offer people like is so needed right now, that it is possible. And so I think we have to hold on to that a little bit and then be balancing. It's all these like tension points to be navigating. So that's a very unclear answer, I suppose, but it's more of yeah, I think it's more in like this collective and collaborative approach of like in solving for, because it's really foundational to how we are in the world. And we have value. It's just like know your value. This is highly valuable work in the world.
Sarah Lynn has a question.
Actually, I wanted to build on to what Heather was saying, to that question about like culture around money, because it was something that I felt like I needed to make a priority when I came here to Guest House. And that was, you know, kind of collaborating with people, but also making sure that everyone on our team was participating in imagining what we could do and who we could be, rather than just, you know, focusing only on like financial paperwork and what does this look like and the analyzation of it. But you have to hold both of those things, you know. So the other thing that we did was similar to what someone was saying earlier, like just looking at it all at the year end and seeing if we made anything, it usually won't work in the long run, because you need to review where is some of the money bleeding, or, you know, are there things that are just not going to support your sustainability, and you got to make a change. But if you're not looking at it at least on a monthly basis, then it'll, you know, sometimes go on for a year before you even realize what it was you could have changed sooner. If anybody wants to do work around money culture, there's a woman at Clear Sky Retreat Center, Karen McAllister. If you know, many of you probably know her. She is fantastic money management, and she uses archetypes to, you know, work with people on that. So that's a good suggestion. The other thing I wanted to say was about like value, like knowing who you are and what you bring to the table. Even if you're in transition, even if your center needs work, like know who you are and what you have to offer, and make sure whatever promises you make in your sales and marketing or in your contracts, that your team is going to deliver on it, because that's how you're going to get the repeat business, which is so much easier to do, is get repeat business than it is to find new customers and get people established. So if you want people to come back, your team has to deliver, you know, on the promises. And don't feel like you have to give everything away. That was something Guest House was just doing left and right. We felt like we had to give everybody free things in order to get them to book. But what I found was my salespeople were offering this before anybody asked, right? So I said, wait for the ask, wait for the ask. And guess what happened? Probably 10% of our groups actually ask for something free. 90% of them looked at the contract, and we're not at all the least expensive retreat center. And so we're not the highest end either, but we're somewhere in between. And so people looked at that, and we sold them on the value. Like what we're charging is, we don't talk about things like market rate. Like we don't have a market rate. We're not a hotel, you know, we're not changing our rates based on holidays and stuff. We know what it takes for us to be sustainable. This is what I have to charge you per room to be here next year when you want to come back. And, you know, so we kind of built on that. So I don't know if that's helpful to anyone, but, you know, I do think the money culture and making sure that people are taking time to imagine what can be, and not just, you know, the paperwork of it, the financial reports, but to do both. Yeah.
There is so much rich conversation happening here, and I'm noting that we're like 7 minutes to the end of our time. Are there any final? Oh,
Maybe I'll just hop on. Maybe
yeah.
I'll wrap, and then if there's any final questions, people can like stay on if you would like. I can stay on.
And I'd just like to do a little closing to wrap up before the
Great.
time ends too. So
So just to wrap things up, like thank you everyone for like the like open, like heartfelt sharing of like there's so much richness in this room of experience. You know, and on that tenor of like in relationship to money, it's like all these things are in service. We have to be a part of us sustaining ourselves in a good way and being able to invest in our organization. It's really critical. And I like to use the word sustainability, but I'm also like at Hollyhock was really using words like durability because everything coming out of the pandemic did not feel durable. It was all kind of like, oh, we're worried about our buildings falling down. And, you know, it's like we need to be able to sustain like some hard things. We have to be really durable. And so the piece that I like encourage of leadership is like to hold the whole. And it's never just like one piece. And I find this is like even in like management of all the different departments and all the people, we work in very complex stakeholder environments. Is that when you can hold the entire well-being of the organization as the highest pinnacle of and like really look at these things of like how are you serving? How are these prioritizing lining up against that whole? And it's the organization is not siloed out in all different ways. Like in leadership for me, like that's the question. Like that is the leadership conundrum and the leadership challenge here. And then because I'm hoping is that we can have like agility in our systems. And as we've been talking on this call, is like our systems are people. So like sure it's the tech and it's the customer conversion and this and that, but it's also like all the people systems we have in. And I think that takes a lot of like courage and like the leadership to support like having like holding the whole, holding our highest vision of our potential of what we want to be and where we are going, and having all the financials and all the ops and all the people like lifting and working together in that way. So that concludes like the talk for today. So if you have any questions or want to talk about your center, I've wrapped up full-time employment with Hollyhock, and I'm currently consulting with different organizations. So if you need help, please feel free to reach out anytime.
thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Heather, for volunteering your time to be with us today. I think there's 33 or 34 of us at the max time today on this call, and I think we've all been like deeply impacted and richly blessed by your time. I'm just going to pop into the chat a few things that are coming up before people jump off. One, our annual retreat is coming up November 10th to 12th. It's going to be at Mount Madonna, which there's a few folks from Mount Madonna here. We're so excited to be heading to California in November. The registration is going to be opening very, very soon. We're just wrapping up a few last little bits and pieces, and we're going to send out a message, and hopefully we'll get lots of folks. If you're not a member of the RCC yet, I highly encourage you to consider a membership, and that is part of my role. And I would be happy to talk to anybody anytime about membership. So if you want to know more about it, send me an email. We can book a time to talk. There's two great community calls coming up in early October. The first is with Tatiana, who's on the call today. And actually, Tatiana is going to be leading a series of community calls over the year on HR, which I know in my former role as an executive director, I wish I had this. And so I think this is going to be a great opportunity. It's tea with Tatiana. So we'll maybe October 7th. And then Peter the next day is going to redo the session that didn't work out so well in August on fundraising and purpose. And so that's 2 days in a row we can all be together. And then stay tuned. I have about 7 ideas for community calls from our time together today. And I just want to thank you for coming and being a part of the RCC and this circle of people. I can feel the love. And if you want to connect to someone on this call and you don't know how, write me and I can make that happen. Okay. So have a great day. and a great week. Take care.
Everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank